Plug in this computer. All right. Yay. Okay, I started recording. Ready or not, here we come. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about Agile Orlando Meetup group because I've been in Orlando since end of 2006. And so I know that the Agile Orlando Meetup group has been going on for since 2008. I wasn't a member way at the beginning, but we've got over 1,000 members now. So Agile Orlando is going strong. And we do have a Slack group that's pretty active, and you don't really necessarily have to be in Florida, but if you need Agile advice, go to agileflorida.com/Slack, and you can join our Slack group and chat with Florida Agilists. And of course, you can always go to agileorlando.com. So we've been more and more trying to introduce virtual meetups into the Agile Orlando area just because, first of all, we're all very busy, and it's pretty wide range of, in Orlando is a pretty big place too, so getting from one side of town to another can be pretty challenging sometimes. So we've done this and added some lunchtime topics that are virtual meetups. And so thanks for everybody for joining in today. And I'm so happy. I'm going to stop sharing so you can all see the gallery view. By the way, if you're new to Zoom, you can tweak the view, speaker view and gallery view in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom window. And so Angie and I have met each other in coaching class, and she wanted to present this topic, which I'm so excited about becoming a product owner. And she and I ran through it yesterday, so I'm so excited to share Angie and her awesome presentation on product ownership.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Heidi. I appreciate that nice introduction. Let me just start sharing my screen here. And I can start my slideshow here. All right, can everybody see the screen?
We've got it.
Awesome. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come and join me on this topic that I'm very passionate about, becoming a product owner, the skills and shifts and mindset. I'm going to start off by just giving you a little bit of background information on me. I'm currently working at Toyota, and I'm a Scrum Master coach there. I'm working with a couple of vehicle security teams, helping them boot up in the Agile practice. I've been working in various different industries, from education to airlines to legal to gambling to military. I think my most interesting one was when I was working with the gambling industry and understanding how they actually program slot machines and the reason why you will never win. And I still play despite the fact that I know you will never win. I also have lots of certifications in Agile coaching, Scrum Master, Product Owner, Product Management, Business Analysis, and even a little bit of Agile testing. I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I live with my 3 dogs, Gunner, Cotton, and Sheba. They frequently photobomb my pictures at home, so I thought it only fitting that they photobomb here on this workshop for you guys. And they're cute too. All right. After today, you will get a good idea of what is and isn't the product owner mindset. You'll also learn about the skills necessary to become a successful product owner and why those skills are important. You'll also learn about the common challenges faced when leaping into the product owner role. As a person who has been a previous business analyst who went into the product owner role, I'm very familiar with the challenges that are associated to it. And as an Agile leader, I had the opportunity to coach others as well to jump into this role. And so I kind of saw the challenges and the things that they went through as well. As a result, I can give you information around ways to prepare for the product owner role. And then I also have a tool that I'll share with you on how you can tell that you've mastered the product owner role and how you can build a roadmap to help you develop that mastery of product ownership. But first, I like to start off with figuring out, where is everybody? If you guys can just put in your chat, what is your current role? What are you looking to get out of this workshop? And just give me that little information so I get an idea of who's out there. So, and Heidi, if you can let me know what you're seeing, that would be awesome.
Yep. So Agile Transformation Coach, Product Owner of E-Commerce, Scrum Master, adopting Agile, learning to scale, enterprise Agile coach looking to help POs, coaches, a product owner for customer success, a film producer who wants to start working with Scrum.
Oh, all right. That's
Anyone
awesome.
remember a Scrum Master? Welcome, Pablo. Product owner at UCF.
Okay.
And this is my first approach. Product owner running as a PO and a Scrum Master.
Okay. Got a lot of different people out there, a lot of different roles, different reasons for joining. Well, thank you all for sharing that with me. I appreciate it. Hopefully I will be able to give you what you're looking for in this presentation, and I'm very confident that I will be able to. So I want to start off first with talking about traditional responsibilities. This is where people usually start from when they're joining into an agile environment. If you're a business analyst, you're very much into requirements document writing. You're taking information and translating it into business needs. Or perhaps maybe you're a project manager who's actually looking at the project life cycle and trying to determine what are the risks and the issues associated to the project, and trying to also figure out what resources that may be needed on the teams to help facilitate or build the product that you're trying to, or accomplish the project that you're working on. And maybe you're also in the technical area where you're creating test plans, or maybe doing technical design and coding, and even maybe some scope management if you're in the project management or the business analyst world. Often people think that these roles and responsibilities are not relevant in an agile world, and that's not necessarily true. If you're a business analyst or or project manager, you're really going to utilize a lot of your different skills in terms of decision making, developing scope, trying to find value, and those sort of things will be very beneficial for you as you roll into the product owner position. I'd like to do another kind of check-in with everyone and see what do you think are the challenges that people encounter with rolling into the product owner role?
Do you want us to paste it in chat, or do you want us to?
Yes, can you paste it in chat so we can get an idea, kind of hear what some people are thinking around, what do they think the challenges might be with jumping into this role?
Yeah, people are saying understanding and defining the roles and responsibilities. What is the role? Other people's opinion of what my role should be.
That's a good one.
Yeah, project versus product thinking, also another one.
Yeah. All of those are great challenges. And I have to say, there are many challenges with jumping in this role, and understanding the roles and responsibilities is one of the biggest things. But what I found through my research and actually working with other people is, I actually think the Scrum Guide has done a disservice to the product owner role. And the reason I say that is because they've done a great job with defining how a product owner interacts with teams. They've done a fantastic job of describing the tactical element of the product owner role. So a lot of people's perceptions around the product owner role is, well, we just write user stories and acceptance criteria, or we manage the backlog and get prioritization and estimates, and we interact daily with the team, and we may do some release planning, determining when we actually release the product that the teams have built. But there's a lot more to this role than just doing those things and being on the tactical piece. In order for you to understand and be able to execute the tactical piece, you have to change your mindset, and you have to start thinking from a more strategic aspect around executing that role. So let's take a look real quickly at what the current traditional mindset is. So the traditional mindset is very much focused on projects. We got to get the projects done. We got to get people and resources to put on the project. We got to manage all the change around the project. It's very focused and defined, so we can't bring in different aspects or different changes to the project. And then also you're focused on solutions. How are we going to solve this? What are we going to do? How are we going to build this? And how we do it? What things are we going to do? What are we going to buy versus sell, or buy versus build, that sort of thing. And that's very focused on the project itself, if you will. But when you shift into an agile product owner mindset, your projects now translate over into thinking more about the business and the product. You're not focused on solutions, but you're focused on the problems. What are we solving? And you're focused on not how we do it, but what are we doing, why are we doing it, and when should we do it. It's very much a different viewpoint on how you're going to execute this role. And the reason that products in the business is more important than projects is because what do people think about when they actually look at projects? They think about the project in and of itself. They think about, how can I execute this project? How can I complete it? How can I get it done? Am I on track to get the project done? The focus there is not on the end users. It's not on what are we trying to solve, and are we trying to solve the right things, and are we solving it in the right way? And when you lose focus on the individuals that you're trying to build products for or build services for, then you don't take them into account. And then you make decisions that may not necessarily support what your end users need or what your business is trying to accomplish or what your business is focusing on. So this is why we want to shift our mindset into thinking more about delighting customers and solving problems and figuring out what our vision and our business goals are so that we can accomplish that. Otherwise, we end up making decisions that may not be in the best interest of the people we're trying to serve. And even with both of these mindsets, communication in people is always relevant. You're always going to be interacting with people. You're always going to be communicating with them. But when you're a product owner, your communication style is going to be a lot different. It's going to involve having some emotional intelligence that's going to be brought up. You're going to have to talk with a lot of different people, more so than what you may be interacting with now. And I'll get to that a little bit more in the next slide. But I just want to make sure that you understand communication and people interaction for a product owner does shift even in this. So the strategic mindset of the product owner. If you look at this, it's really about the product over the projects. And I kind of touched on that in the last slide. You're really focusing on the product. You focus on the life cycle of the product. When are you going to introduce it into the market? When has it matured? How are you going to mature it? What markets are you actually going to enter? When are you going to sunset? When are you going to kill that product and not utilize it anymore? And in order for you to be able to make those decisions and to think about that, you really need to understand what is the business. What domain are you working in? Markets and what's going on in the market, what's impacting the market, what's changing in the market, what direction is the market going? What's the industry doing? Are they focusing on mobile? Are they focusing on security? Are they focusing on self-driving cars? What are they actually thinking about, and where's the next direction they're going? And then also the organization, because the organization has its vision and its goals. It has certain things that it wants to accomplish as well. One thing to think about too with the organization is not everything is built upon return on investment or ROI. There are some times that you're going to, as a product owner, work on things that are intangibles. So for instance, I worked with a company, LexisNexis, and their biggest thing they wanted to work on was Net Promoter Scores. And if you're not familiar with that, that's just a simple question that people ask. How likely are you to recommend this product, this service, or this company? Very simple. And there had been a study that had been taken that really connected the NPS score with a business's level of revenue. The higher your NPS score was, the more revenue you generated. So they really wanted to focus on that. And they also wanted to focus on endorsements and branding. They wanted to get more Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 200 companies to endorse their product and give them testimonials so that they could put that on the website. Now, those things don't really necessarily bring a very significant or definite return on investment. You're not going to know how much more money you're going to acquire if someone endorses you or if your net promoter score goes up. So as a product owner, we had to figure out what were the things that we wanted to work on that would help us increase our NPS score. What were the things that we needed to do to actually help our branding and get those endorsements? Oftentimes, it wasn't anything that had to do with the product. In one case, it actually had to do with our customer service and how we were tiered up with providing service to our company. They were very upset because we would always change our contacts. Once they got implemented, we give them a new contact, and that person didn't necessarily have the breadth of knowledge, from beginning to end, so they had a lot of different challenges. So that resulted in us changing our customer service model so that we'd have a person from the beginning to end to support the customer. And as a result, we got more endorsements. Our NPS scores went up. In another instance, it was our pricing model that was the issue. The customers didn't really understand what they were getting and how much they were getting and why they were paying so much for certain things. And their contracts are very, very confusing. So we had to change our pricing model in order to accommodate their requests. And once we did that, boom, again, our branding went up, our NPS scores went up, and we got those extra endorsements. So often you have to think about the big picture. Sometimes it's not even really about the product. Sometimes it's about how the product is actually supported and those peripheral things that interact or support your product. And that's why the business is so important. And then the product itself. So what is a product? Lots of people think of the product as being something tangible, such as a website or a product like a drink or a car or something. Sometimes it's actually a service. I know a lot of us out there work with technical teams that are doing a lot of technical work, and they're saying, this is not a product. We don't know how to do that. It doesn't make any sense. We can't apply product management rules to that. Well, that's not true. If you think of a product and a service as the same thing, you can take the same tools. You still have to have a vision and goal. So when I worked at Southwest, the product manager there, product owner there, his team was actually making web APIs for the business and the consumer and for the mobile teams. So they would utilize them. And he thought that his service that he was providing was web APIs, connectivity, interaction, communication between different things. So he wanted to figure out how he could take that concept and actually use it internally and support some of the problems or support the other departments within Southwest that may use the technology and the services that he was providing. Now, it wasn't anything tangible per se, but he was actually looking at it from a perspective of, if my departments, if my internal people were my customers, how could I solve their problems? What could I do to make their jobs easier? Well, how can I alleviate their pains? And as a result, he was able to figure out how to do some extra work with the team, with the other departments, and get some extra work for his team and actually build a whole nother team of supporting internally. So when he had that vision and that goal of saying, I'm going to provide connectivity service to my internal clients, that's generated a lot of different ideas. And that's the big thing with being a product owner in vision and goals. You really need to motivate your people. You really need to have a vision that incites people, that gets them really, really passionate and excited about coming to work and working on your team. And that requires you to build a roadmap. That roadmap is going to align with what your vision and goal is. And when you build that roadmap, then you can start building out your stories and your epics and doing story mapping and figuring out what are the minimum viable products, minimal viable things that you need to build in order to support those problems that you're trying to fix. And then you can determine what releases, when you're going to release. Now, releases sometimes trick product owners up because they feel, okay, it's been built, I got to go ahead and release it. And that's not necessarily true. You can actually hold off and wait and release things at a very pertinent time, such as you want to release stuff just in time for a user conference, or maybe you have a cyclical thing that you want to actually get it done before the end of the year because Christmas is coming or Thanksgiving is coming. So you want to strategically figure out when you want to release things that's going to give you the biggest bang for the buck. So that's what you're looking for there. And that's why problems over solutions are more applicable in the product owner role, because you want to figure out what you're actually trying to solve. And then you want to check what you're solving, why and when, of course. And then that why and when helps you get that connection with your Scrum teams and help gets them motivated and give them that vision so they get excited when they start thinking about it. And this is another thing to think about too, is if you're talking about why you're solving problems versus I'm working on this project. Yeah, I mean, how many of you have had a project called something that's so obscure you don't even, you've forgotten what the project is even about? Project Phoenix, Project Orange, Project Tangiho. None of those things really relate to anyone. But if you say, you know what, I'm going to improve the security wealth of the organization, and I'm going to focus on eliminating insider threat holes. That's way more fascinating and interesting than, yeah, Project Yellow. Okay. So you want to get something that really excites people, that motivates them, that gets them to start thinking and become more innovative when you're developing your vision and you're thinking about why you're doing it and what, and you're communicating to your teams and to the rest of the organization and stakeholders. Now, I talked previously about the people element of this. So as a product owner, you're going to start talking to lots of different individuals. You're going to start talking to end users. You're actually going to go out and start interacting with them, watch them as they do their job, interview them, get to know them, almost to the point where you can actually do their job because you understand it that well. And then this is where you get some of your ideas on how you can fix their problems, and more importantly, what their problems really are. Because that's the biggest thing that happens is product owners really don't know why they're solving them and what the problems and the pain points are. And just because an end user says, this is what I want, as a product owner, you're going to have to interview and dig a little bit deeper. Even though everyone says customers know best, they really don't. They know what they want when they see it, but you're going to have to help them figure out what they need to see and figure out why they need to see it. Because they don't always know. Sometimes it's not until they actually see it that they go, yeah, that's what I was talking about, even though they said something completely opposite. I had one end user who said, I don't care what you do, just make it better and don't change how I work. That's kind of contradicting to what she's saying. She's saying two different things there. So what she was really saying is, make my job easier. Make the changes so that I don't have to think so much, I don't have to do so many steps, and that it's not going to be hard for me. And that's what she was really trying to say. You have to dig in order to find that out. And then your customers, who are you going to sell this to? Or who are you going to market this to? Or who are you going to cajole into using it, like we did at Southwest, getting other departments to jump on board to want to use our services? And what are their needs? And how do their needs contradict what the needs of the end users want? How are you going to balance that out? How are you going to get them to actually talk to you about what's not right about your product or what they would like to do better, get them on board? So you're going to have to do a lot of relationship building there. And then utilizing vendors. How can I utilize vendors and partner with them in order to use some of their connections, or for them to use our connections, so we can build a network of customers and end users together. And then there's the stakeholders. And these cover everything from your manager to other departments in the organizations, to the teams that you work with, to the business leaders. And all of these people you're going to have to interact with, get ideas from, try to balance out all their needs, and let's face it, try to make decisions that are going to be unpopular in all of those areas. So that's why this strategic mindset that you have to have is way, way bigger. I once had a director of product management who said to me he loved being a product manager and a product owner, for the main reason is it's the closest thing that you can get to owning a business without actually owning a business. And as a product owner, that's the way you want to think about your product or the service that you're working with and that you're managing, because it is a business. It is a thing that's very viable, and you want to make sure you address it in that manner. Now, in order for you to master this product owner role, there's 5 elements that are associated to it. And that is user experience, value management, backlog management, continuous planning, stakeholder management, and continuous learning. And I'm going to go through here each one of these and kind of give you an idea of what they are and let you know about what are some of the things that will indicate that you've actually mastered this particular area. And all of these things are important in being able to work with the various stakeholders and your teams that you need. For instance, with user experience, this is very much the primary thing that you want to do, and you're trying to delight your customers. You're trying to make sure that they are happy with your product and you've solved the right problems and addressed their needs. And the value management, this is important for your teams because this is where you give them direction. This is where you give them the guidance and the information that they need in order to build the product or service. So let me just go in a little bit more and deeper. I'll talk about the other areas a little bit later. I don't want to jump ahead too far. But user experience. So user experience is really about understanding the needs and wants and pains of end users. A lot of people are very mistaken that user experience is just about the visualization of a product, and that's not true. There are so many different areas associated with user experience. It's phenomenal. When I was actually managing user experience designers, it was unbelievable the different things that they actually encounter and work with and do. So for instance, they actually interaction design. And interaction design is really trying to understand how end users use the product or use the service, how they interact with it, what are their tendencies, um, how do they look at things, what is their job, and how does the screen or the service complement or not complement what they do? How do we make sure we put things in the right place? So this is all about interaction. It has nothing to do with the visualization of things. It has to do with how we set up stuff so that they can actually do their work better. And then there's content strategy. And how often have you been on a project where you use terminology that's very much um, so much that it's that you understand it, but your end users don't understand it because you're not talking their language. It's very foreign to them, but you're sticking in all these terms because that's how we use it internally. And when they get to it, they have no idea what you're talking about. So we have to figure out what is the content, what is the message that we need to provide, what is the wording that we need to put in there. And are we putting in the right things? Are we putting in too much information? Do we need to scale back? Are we trying to give them too much guidance or not enough guidance? So it's thinking about those things as well. And it's also thinking about the empathy of the user and trying to figure out, how are they feeling when they do this? How you need to understand what's Susie like when she comes in the first thing in the morning? Is she grumpy? Is she happy? Is she a morning person? Is she an afternoon person? All of these things come into play when you're actually thinking about user design. And another facet too that people don't remember or they forget is that user design is not about people. It's actually also about systems. And what I mean by that is if you think about your phone and your thermostat, those are two devices interacting and talking to one another. They're not human. And as you're building these things out, you have to think about what is it that thermostat needs from that cell phone in order to be able to interact with one another. What's going to make it easier for you? What are they expecting? What kind of data are they expecting to get back? What are they not expecting? How can we make it easier for them to get the information? Do we have to use this type of technology or these types of APIs or FTP? What's going to make it easy for these two systems to work together? When I worked at Cox Automotive, we had to talk a lot with the DMV, and a lot of their systems were antiquated, and they were using old technology. And it was very much a hardship for us to get some of their information out of their systems and put it into a more advanced technology. So that was an interaction that we had to figure out and trying to make it usable so that when we sent them information, there wasn't a hardship on their system. And when they sent us information, we didn't have to do so much massaging to get what we needed out of it. So user experience really encompasses not only people, but it encompasses systems. It encompasses the Internet of Things, if you will. And also as part of the user experience, they do a lot of user journey mapping. And what this is they actually lay out the workflow of the end users or the systems that they're working for from end to end, and they're looking for different places that they can see where they can improve maybe usability or interaction or whatever else that may be associated with user experience. And there's also another level of user experience. It's, and I mentioned this earlier, it's end user versus buyer. When I worked at LexisNexis, we went in and then talking to a customer and talking to the chief of legal department, and he's like, you know, we need all this information, we need this data in order to create these reports so we can figure out what resources and where we're going to spend money and da da da. And it was, but we need our attorneys to put in this information in order for us to make those decisions. And we're like, okay, fine. So we started talking to the attorneys, and what we learned was that they typically put in this information at the end of the week when their mind is not fresh at the end of the day because they're hurrying up and trying to leave for the weekend. They really don't track some of the information that the organization was wanting and looking for. So it wasn't something that they really had readily or handily available to them. And they really just wanted to get in and get out. They didn't want to have to put in this information. They understood the importance of it and why management needed it, but it wasn't something that was motivating to them. So as product owners, we had to figure out how can we accommodate the buyer and the end user to get them motivated to put in the information so that the buyer, the chief of the legal department, would get what he wanted. So it's trying to balance those out and figuring out how I can have these two opposing forces come together and create something that's going to accommodate both of them. So understanding the basics of end user user experience and getting to understand the different elements of it. Once you know that, and you start incorporating that into your roadmap, and you start thinking about it on a regular basis, and you're out there actually talking to your end users and customers, this is a sign that you have really encompassed user experience and you really know what it means and what it's about. So value management, and this is kind of where the rubber hits the road, if you will. This is where the product manager determines what it is they're going to actually work on. What are the things, what are the right problems that we need to solve in order to benefit the company and the end users? This is where you start having that conflict, if you will, with your end users and your organization and even your teams in certain instances, because you may not have a fully baked idea, and you're going to have to motivate your team and explain to them the value of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and get them on board with actually helping you solve this problem that you're focusing on. I find this very common in a couple of places where people are trying to gather data and figuring out how they want to actually use it. So when I was at Cox Automotive and even here at Toyota, they've got a lot of data out there, and they know that they want to solve a certain problem, such as security or getting information to help people make better decisions, as it was in Cox Automotive, but they're not quite sure what that looks like. And I know at Cox, the teams were very, very distraught because they could not see the vision that the product owner had. And the product owner himself didn't really have a great vision. He knew that there was something there, and he knew because he was hearing it in the marketplace, but it was still kind of fuzzy. So it was challenging for him to get the teams motivated and getting them convinced that what they were working on was the most valuable thing. And as a result, team morale kind of went down, and they felt like they were just going around in circles. So it's very, very important to communicate a clear vision and the roadmap for where you're going. And if you can't, do the best you can and get them excited just as much as you are. So transparency is very, very key here in telling them, hey, I don't really know everything yet, but here's what I know now, and here's where it looks like we're going, and I'm confident that we'll figure it out once we get more information or more data. Another sign that you've mastered the value management is if you start using story mapping, putting up on a board and figuring out what stories that you want to actually work on, what epics that you want to focus on, and making sure that you have that up to date and that you're delivering the most valuable things to your customers. And then engagement with your customers and stakeholders. These are the people that are going to help you define the priorities, help you figure out what are the things that you need to work on first, and what are the things that could actually set aside for later. Also, with value management, you have to take into account technical stories. Now, you may not be a technical product owner, and you may not know a lot about the technical side of it, and that's okay. You surround yourself around with people who know that and understand that and can help you. Because as a product owner, you don't know it all, despite what you may think. You don't know it all, and it's okay, because there are other people around you that will support you, that will help you with the things that you don't know. See, that's why you leverage those individuals and their expertise to help you. Prioritizing technical stories in with the business stories is very key. And the reason that it is because you may not be able to provide some business value if your technical platform or your technical software is lacking. You're going to prohibit and limit the things that you can do and how much you can actually be able to support your end customers. So for instance, when I worked at LexisNexis, we wanted to implement a workflow and a rules engine. And our product owner, and he was going to tell you he was not technical, had no clue what that meant and how to do that. He just knew that our competitors had it and they were blowing us out of the water in that area. So we needed to incorporate some technical stories into the pipeline so that he would be able to start building out those things and competing with our competitors. So he leveraged the solution architects and technical leads and so forth to help him build out those technical stories and help him prioritize based upon the business need and the business value that he was looking to achieve. So you utilize your resources. And that leads into utilizing your teams for input on features and innovation and reducing that technical debt. They're right there in the heart of things, right in the middle of the jungle, and they see things that you're not going to be able to see. So it's important to listen to them and understand what they're saying and understand how that impacts the whole picture and the vision and goals that you have for your product. And then we all have customers who want stuff now. Got to have it now. Got to please the customer. Well, as a product owner, you're going to have to weigh those requests against the product vision. I once worked for a CEO who said, we are no longer going to bring on customers that don't align to our business value. Don't really care if they're going to bring us $5, $10, $15 million. If they're not aligned with what we're going to try to do with our business, we're going to say thank you, but it's not a good fit. Now that's really unheard of, because who would want to turn down $10, $15 million? On the flip side, what was happening is that we were taking on those customers and we were spending so much money supporting them that we were forgetting about our other customers and we were losing money there. And we weren't getting as much from the customer that we thought we were going to get. So in the long run, we ended up actually losing money instead of gaining money. So it's important to make sure that you stay true to your vision and you stay true to your goals so that you don't get into these weird positions or these weird states where you're doing more damage to the organization and your teams than good. And also, as a product owner, value management thinks about the full cycle of the product when you're making the decisions for it. So you want to think about, how is this going to impact down the future? How is this going to set me up to be able to enter into new markets, or to bring in new features, or to bring on new clients, or to disrupt other competitors? So you got to think about that whole picture. And is this really going to benefit us in the long run? Is this something that I need to do because I know that I'm getting ready to sunset this particular product and no longer support it. So maybe that particular thing is not the thing that I need to focus on right now. And then you know that you've really, really mastered value management when you start writing your user stories and acceptance criteria, where they're actually written in such a way as it's benefiting your Scrum team. So your user stories and acceptance criteria may be written in behavior-driven development, where you're talking about the behaviors that you're looking for. Or maybe it's driven in acceptance test driven development, where you're talking about how you know that you've actually accomplished what you're looking for. And these are things that can catapult your Scrum teams into delivering things a lot faster with a lot better quality if you can start writing a little bit into their language, but still maintaining the business value and the business perspective that's needed. And these are definite signs. If you get to that level, you have really, really gone above and beyond and mastered the value management piece. Backlog management. Lots of folks think that backlog management is just merely putting things in order that you want to get them done. And that's far, far, far from the truth. Backlog management is really looking at what am I trying to achieve? What's my vision and goal? What's the life cycle of my product? Where am I trying to go? And then putting those things in order so that you get the biggest value that you can at the right time as soon as possible. Cost of delay is a methodology that you can use to help prioritize your backlog. There are other various techniques you can use as well to help you prioritize your backlog. Some product owners develop categories that they have, and then they figure out how each thing that they're trying to do rates in those categories. They actually do planning poker with these categories with certain features, and they figure out, what's based upon these certain categories, where does this particular feature fall in? And then they add up the score, and then they say, you know what, this is where I really want to spend my time. This is how I want to prioritize these things. And they also focus, when they're doing backlog management, on eliminating waste. We've all heard where we gold plate our software, and like, for instance, Excel, it says that approximately, I think, the majority of people that use Excel only use 10% of the features that are actually in Excel. And you think about all those other features, what could we have been doing, or what could Microsoft have been doing instead of working on those features? They're kind of waste. Even though they're nice to haves, they're really not providing a whole lot of value to the majority of their end users. And they're probably cluttering up a lot of stuff and making it more difficult to actually use the product in and of itself. So when you're looking at your backlog and prioritizing it, you want to look at what outcomes are you wanting to achieve, not necessarily the problems. The problems helps you build that list, but when you look at how you're going to prioritize, what is the outcome that you're trying to fit? Are you trying to increase your NPS? Are you trying to increase the usability? Are you trying to combat something that your competitor has done? Or are you trying to increase your ROI? You want to think about what outcome you're trying to achieve when you're prioritizing your stories. Another thing that can tell you that your backlog is in a good shape is if your stories are written what we call from vertical stack slices rather than component layers. And let me explain that a little bit. So if you think about a cake, a 3-layer cake, you have one layer, the first layer, and then you put on some icing, and you have the second layer and put on more icing, and the top layer, you put on more icing. And until all of those things occur, you can't really enjoy that cake. Because you got to wait till everything is completed. Now that is building something by component or layer by layer. That's what we call horizontal building of a product. Now let's say that you actually took the flip side of that, and maybe you made a little piece of the cake, and then you put a little icing, little piece, make just a little slice, and then you give it to someone. And they can eat that cake and they go, the bottom piece doesn't really taste very well. The icing in the middle is not great. They're giving you immediate feedback on that little slice. And now you can start making changes as you build the rest of that cake. And you can do it quickly. And now, because of that, you're wasting less time. You're getting that immediate feedback, and you're not waiting to the end where you've built this big cake and you can't make any adjustments to it, and that the customer's telling you they don't like it, and you're like, oh my gosh, but the wedding is in 3 hours, so I don't have time to make another cake because you've layered it out. So making sure that when they create the stories, you're actually getting some business value, and that piece of business value from that story can stand alone. You want to think of it this way with your teams. If this was the only thing that you could build, what would it be, and what value would it bring, and would it be enough if you just did that? That way, that'll get you away from trying to do the component thing and thinking of layers, if you will, and saying, well, I got to build the platform first, and then I got to build the middle tier, and then I got to build the front end. No, how can you make it so that you build a little bit of the front end, a little bit of the middle tier, and a little bit of the platform, and your end users can actually use it? Now, it may not be, optimized, and it may not be the biggest, prettiest thing per se, but they can still use it, and it solves their pain point. What I like to tell teams is, you really don't know how to solve your end users' problems until you really interact and talk with them. And even though you may think it's not valuable, they will think it's valuable. An example that I like to give is, there was one time where our customer just wanted one data point on a page. It was just one number that they needed to help make their job better. And it took us actually 3 years before we decided to put this one piece, because we didn't think it was valuable enough. We thought, it's just a number, it's no big deal. How could that have any value? Well, it turns out that we didn't understand that they did a lot of extra work to get that number, to do other things. So by putting that one field on the page, we ended up saving them an hour and a half of work. It was the number one thing that they talked about at our end user conference, was that one field that we put on there. So think about value, think about small things, think about slices, and think about how you're solving the end user's problem. That's really what you want to focus on when you do backlog management. Continuous planning. So this is really preparing continually throughout the whole sprint, or throughout the whole cycle of your product, and adapting to the change that comes along. So this is about doing things just in time. This is about looking at releases and determining, if they are adhering to your vision and your goals and the objectives that you have. Are you planning accordingly? Are you constantly updating your roadmap and aligning it with the strategy? Is it changing with the strategy? Is it changing with the market as it needs to? Are you delivering things in small increments? How can you make those small increments? How can you get the biggest bang for the buck as you are going through and planning for things? You want to make sure that everything that you do really, really, really is focused on the outcomes, the personas. And I didn't mention this when we talked about user experience, but you have to understand who the people are that are actually utilizing your product. And these are described as personas, and they're archetypes of individuals that are using your product, because not everybody uses it the same way, even though they may have the same job. You have different levels within that. So you want to understand, am I addressing my personas that use my product? And then working with the team, you want to determine what can be completed and what can't be completed. How is technology working with you? How is technology working against you? So you always want to be thinking and planning and moving things around and making sure they're up to date and focused on the various things that are the most important to whatever your vision and goal is for your business and your product. And then there's stakeholder management. So with stakeholder management, this is where your communication skills come into play. This is where you have to balance between multiple requests from different areas. This is where you're going to collaborate with your customers and manage the release and be proactive about your communication. If you have to set expectations, if you think you're not going to be able to deliver something, or even if you think you're going to deliver something sooner, you want to make sure you communicate that out and keep everybody apprised of the risks and the progress that you're making, so there are no surprises to individuals. You want to collaborate with the team and make sure that they understand why they're building the most valuable product and what that means to their customers. You want to help them get interacted with the customers if you can. I remember at LexisNexis, once we started getting our developers and our testers into some of the demos that we had with our end customers, they started to hear what the feedback, and they started to believe into, oh gosh, yeah, they really are telling us what we should and shouldn't be doing, and they really do understand the customers, and wow, I didn't realize that's how they did their job, or that's how they used it. So they started to get more innovative and creative, and so the more we got them involved with just listening and hearing what the clients would do, the more creative and innovative they were. So that's a different way of managing your stakeholders and getting them more involved. And you want to make sure you meet regularly with them. If you don't meet regularly, you're not going to build that rapport. You're not going to build that trust in them. And when you say things to them, they're not going to believe you. So you want to make sure that you have that constant feedback, that constant interaction, that constant loop of improvements that you can get from by having those regular meetings. And again, transparency is really, really key important. I know lots of times we don't want to be honest with our clients, but they really do appreciate the honesty and being upfront with them, because let's think about it. They're in business too. And some of the things that we encounter, they encounter as well on their side. So they get it. They understand it. They just want to know about it so that they can plan accordingly, just like you can plan accordingly. And then for all this really to make sense and for it all to jive together, you got to do continuous improvement on yourself. You have to start feeling confident in your role, that you possess that domain knowledge. Go out and do some research, talk to other people, really embed yourself in the team and get to know them and understand how they work and how they think so you can build that trust. And you need to network as well. You need to look at the organizational impediments and see how they will hinder and help what you're trying to do with your product. You want to stay connected to other product individuals so that you can gain some knowledge and experience from them and collaborate with them as well and grow your skills inside. And you also want to be able to help the teams innovate from a larger organization perspective. You know, as I say, looking at the whole organization, how can you help them help you is what it really comes down to. And in order for you to make all this work, it is important as a product owner for you to get these skills. You're a change agent. You're going to be asking to change a lot of different things in the way that you think about it. So as a change agent, you're going to have to communicate effectively and give the reasons behind what you're thinking and why you're thinking that, and be open and have that direct conversation. Decisiveness. You're going to have to make some decisions that are very, very unpopular, and you're going to be uncomfortable with them, and they're going to be tough decisions, but you're going to make them. As long as you have a good reason behind it, most people are going to be accommodating and understand where you're coming from. But because you're making some of those unpopular conversations, you're going to have some negotiation, conflict management skills. Those are going to help you with getting to consensus with the people that you're having a difference of opinion with. And make this all work is relationship building. You got to get people that are going to be your allies, that trust you, that are willing to follow you and go wherever you go. And this is where the servant leadership comes into play as well, where you're not telling people what to do, but you're helping them figure out how they're going to do it and where they need to go. As a product owner, you need to be motivational and inspirational. You got to exhibit that confidence. You got to be sure about yourself and be empathetic to your teams. And that's where emotional intelligence comes in. This is one of the hardest things for people to acquire, is this emotional intelligence, really understanding how people think and what their dynamics and how they act, and possessing patience with them and being sympathetic and empathetic with them. This is really where you're going to maybe struggle with this aspect if you're not really a people person. And then it's the business savvy. You want to be able to look at things from a strategic perspective and question why. Just because your stakeholders say this is what you want to do or this is what they need, ping them a little, poke at it a little bit, challenge them a little bit to make sure this is what they're actually wanting and needing. Now, I know this is a lot of stuff that I've thrown on you here. And what I have is I have a radar development tool that you can utilize. It's on my website, angiepate.com/tools. You can go there and get this. And basically, it's just a spreadsheet. And it gives you a list of things on different levels that if you've actually acquired your mastery of that particular level, you'd give it a number. And then once you fill it all out, it would give you this diagram here. And you can utilize this diagram to help you figure out where you want to start focusing on those 5 areas of your product owner mastery. This diagram here is actually mine right after I left the product owner role. And this is where I was when I was doing the product owner role. As you see, I kind of had backlog management and value management down to a T. And then here, my user experience and my continuous planning was not not the greatest. I need a little continuous learning in those areas. So this kind of gave me an idea of where I could start focusing and looking at different areas that I could start firming up a little bit and becoming stronger at. So this is a great tool to help you kind of build your roadmap on where you want to start beginning to develop your skills and develop your areas of expertise. So I know I've done a lot of talking, and I apologize, but I want to try to quickly get to this and check your own mindset here. And because we're almost running out of time. But here's some of the things that you encounter, and feel free to put things in the chat message if you want to with answering these questions, just so we can get a little idea of what everyone's thinking out there. But as a product owner, what you'll think about is what makes your product stand out from competitors. Do you know who your competitors are? And if you don't know who your competitor is, how will you find out? And if your product doesn't stand out from your competitors, what will you do to make it stand out? So these are the types of things that you'll be thinking about as you're going through the value management and the backlog management pieces. Heidi, we got some any takers out there in terms of telling us how their product stands out from competitors?
No, but the great questions that you said reminded me that I wanted to just share. I have these product owner coaching cards, and they're actually really great questions also. And one of my favorite ones was like, if your product was a living, breathing being, what would it tell you? What would you be afraid that it would tell you? So these cards are actually really great. They help me and product owners a lot.
Yeah, I have those too. Yeah, those are great cards. I think I may actually have a question or two on here out of those. But here's some other questions too. What factors do you consider when you're prioritizing the backlog? What is your approach? What is your philosophy around product backlog management and prioritization? What's the one thing that could completely sabotage your product? I really like this question. As I was talking with Heidi yesterday, we did a walkthrough. I'm like, I'm sure NASA never in 1,000 years thought that Tesla would be a competitor to them in terms of making rockets go to the moon or to the Mars or anything. We always thought NASA would be the only people who would ever do that. And then also with taxi industry, Uber and Lyft, they sabotage that industry as well. So I'm sure there's a lot of different examples out there that you can think of who could actually sabotage your product. They come in the most unlikely ways. So don't think that your normal competitors are out there. You want to think a little bit beyond that and think really wild and crazy. And you can have a great exercise with this and brainstorming and saying, get ridiculous. Who would be the craziest person on earth to actually sabotage what we do? And it'd be interesting some of the feedback you get out and you get back from that, and you more than likely would actually be right.
Yeah.
And then again, what are the different types of end users that use your product? And this goes back to, do you really understand who you're building your products and services for? Do you understand your end users and your customers? So when I was at Cox Automotive and we did the transformation of our business analysts into product owners, we did a retrospective at the end. And this is some of the feedback that we got from the individuals in terms of their message to others. And this is what they came up with. They really struggled with servant leadership, and they really struggled with emotional intelligence. And it was that servant leadership was allowing the teams to make decisions for themselves, allowing them to utilize their expertise, and letting them figure out how they were going to do things instead of telling them what they're going to do. And then from emotional intelligence, it was really understanding the motivation and how to get that team inspired to do things. And it was also understanding the frustration of the stakeholders and knowing that you're going to take the brunt of that frustration and being empathetic and trying to understand, where they're coming from. So these are a couple of areas that you may want to hone in on a little bit as you're transitioning into that product owner role. And they also gave us some feedback into different ways that people who are transitioning and leaping into the product owner role can increase their success. So getting some training. A lot of times we didn't provide any training on what it was like to really be a product owner, especially from that strategic standpoint. So they felt that training would have been very beneficial. Do some job shadowing. If you know someone who already is in the product owner role, follow them around. be a little puppy and observe everything that they're doing, and getting an understanding of what it's really like. And acquire a mentor. I recommend acquiring a mentor that's maybe outside of your organization. That way you can get a different perspective around things, and they can help you brainstorm. They can help you with guidance and give you suggestions on different ways to do things. But if you can't get one from the outside of the organization, just get one. You know, having one is much, much better than not. Another thing they said that would be very beneficial is being comfortable with saying no. You know, or if you're not comfortable with that, at least saying not right now, because people are going to ask you to do things that really aren't in line with what your vision or your goal is, or the timing of what they're asking you to do is not right. You want to do it, but it'll have to occur later. So being able to say no and not right now is going to save you from focusing on the wrong thing and making big mistakes in terms of helping your organization and your team and yourself succeed. And then also understanding the role of development managers and how it changes. Your interaction with them is going to be different. A lot of it is going to be based upon making sure the right technology is out there, making sure the teams have the right skill set, and it's going to be different than them actually kind of playing that project management role, if you will. And then they also, and lastly, the people struggled with strategic thinking. They weren't used to thinking from that global perspective, so that was very challenging for them, and they recommend actually trying to figure out how to get that and hone that skill. Some resources that was suggested: pragmatic marketing, that gives you a great understanding of product management in a whole and all the various aspects related to that, in terms of how a product is sold and the business and buyer personas, and just how you manage the whole product from end to end. Also, you want to get certified product owner training for Agile, and that will help immensely with that tactical piece of it, playing the role. And then crucial conversations helps with communications. As you see, it's under training, and it's also communication, crucial conversations under the books as well. If you can get either one, it'll be great, because it will help you with those conflicts that you're going to encounter. And then Strategize by Rowan Pickler, that really is on product management and how to think from that strategic perspective. A user story mapping, if you're not familiar with how to get your users and put them, or user stories, and put them in the right place so that you can actually figure out how to do releases and figure out that minimum viable product. That's a good book. Lean UX will help you with understanding some user experience and how it relates into Agile. The Emotional Intelligence by Travis Bradberry, that's a great book that will help you understand how to start developing the emotional intelligence skills and honing those in. And then The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team gives you the understanding of how your team is working together, where they're at, where their maturity level is or isn't, and how you can utilize that as you start bringing more value to your teams to build, create. Again, if you need that product owner capability radar, it's at angiepate.com/tools. Feel free to go there and download it and read anything else that you might find interesting on my blog. It's always there available for everyone. And that's it for me. And we have time for questions if anyone can hang on for a few minutes, and I'd be more than happy to answer anything that is burning on your mind.
Anyone have questions? I have one if no one else does. I saw on your slide there that you said start thinking strategically. Do you have any suggestions on how to get people to start thinking strategically? Like if I'm only thinking tactically today, like what would you, where would I start?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And it's one that people struggle with quite a bit. So I would start, my biggest thing is to think bigger than what you're thinking about right now, and start asking yourselves a little questions. So for instance, the simple question is, if you decide to do something today, ask yourself, why now? Why should I do this now? What would happen if I didn't do this? And just also just questioning yourself of the decisions that you make, and see, well, step back and go, if I didn't do this, how would it impact the greater organization? How would it impact the team? And you do it just little by little and say, start with your team. How would it impact the team? How would it impact my department? Or how would it impact the organization? How would it impact myself? How would it impact the end user? So those are types of things where you start thinking a little bit more strategically, and you're not just thinking about, I got to get it done.
Right.
And so you can start asking yourself a little question and keep expanding on what the impact is as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Cool.
And then, of course, reading books will always help you with trying to figure out what strategy is. A lot of people struggle with just what it is, and then getting that understanding as well.
Thank you. There's another question of, what types of stakeholder meetings do you recommend? I have execs mid-level for sustainment and bugs and tech debt, and they don't care about the same things. Am I holding 3 meetings a week?
Yeah, well, that's a good one. What I recommend there is look at all those 3 different areas and then see if there's any similarities between individuals there, and see if you can have a meeting with them. Because what will happen is they will become your allies. Those are the people that actually understand what's trying to occur. And those are the ones that will be able to help you communicate with other people and help get your message to others, and build that community, if you will, of making that synergy and that consensus. Now, if all 3 of those levels are so diverse and there aren't individuals in there that can actually kind of come together, you may have to start just doing it one person at a time, and getting that to the point where you start building that ally and that for lack of a word, army of individuals that have the same mindset, or start convincing them. So that's what I would recommend to you. Having the 3 meetings, that may be something that you need to do, but you want to think about how you can leverage what you know about the individuals and build a commonality between that, and leverage that to help you bring in the rest.
Right. Or else maybe like bugs need once a week and other people need every other week or something.
Something along that. Yeah, I mean, it's really going to come down to how you can best utilize the resources, that the teams that you have, and get the outcome that you're trying to achieve by coordinating that together. So yeah, my first recommendation is see how you can get those groups together that are like-minded, and go from there.
Cool, thanks. Awesome. It doesn't look like there's any more questions, and
Okay.
yeah, thank you so much for your time. This has been really awesome. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Everybody had great feedback, and so we'll be posting it in the comments I'll upload it to YouTube, and it'll be posted in the comments in Meetup, and I'll tweet it out on Twitter. Yeah, feedback appreciated. So let us know how you like it.
Yes, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Awesome. And by the way, just before you cut out, Angie, someone said it's inspirational and reinforcing that I'm on the right track.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah.
I see Anna's pointing to herself. Awesome,
Yeah,
Anna.
great.
So great.
Awesome.
Such great feedback. Keep up the good work.
Thanks for sharing your advice and expertise for us.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.